Hi everyone, and welcome back to the George Collection. I am Rachel with Right Side Blonde. I really hope you enjoyed last week's episode. I took a break from reading some articles to just give you sort of a montage of covers and excerpts from different magazines and show you kind of how they're playing out today with the Trump speech, Who Will Make Us Proud Again? That was a really big one. Also the cover of the February 1997 issue with model Karen Mulder. There were some revelations that came out recently about her. So if you haven't watched that episode, please go back and check it out. Episode 5, this is episode 6, and this will conclude our Hillary series. This magazine is from April 1998, and the cover says, Why Hillary Still Stands by Her Man. This is a hilarious article. I was chuckling out loud when I was reading it, so I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Before we get started, I wanted to take 1 second to show you my new addition to my background if you haven't spotted it yet. It is my Rosie poster. Mr. Vincent Fusca sent me another great gift and sent me this poster signed, and I will take excellent care of it. I think it might become a staple to my background. What do you guys think? Yes or no? Should I leave it or should I find something else to put there? I think it looks great. So thank you, Vincent, for the shirt from a couple weeks ago and the poster from last week. I am very thankful for them. I will take excellent care of them, and I will show them off as much as I can. So thanks. Let's begin episode 6. Why is Hillary Clinton standing by her man despite the allegations of adultery that plague him? Because without Bill, Hillary would be nothing. An exclusive adaptation from Bitch, in Praise of Difficult Women by Elizabeth Wurtzel. The article is called Her Age of Innocence. There's an apocryphal story that, like most bits of folklore, ought to be true even if it isn't. According to this myth, Bill and Hillary Clinton were driving along one day when they pulled into a gas station and had their car serviced by a man who turned out to be an old high school beau of Hillary's. So Bill said to her, If you had married him, you'd be the wife of a gas station attendant. To which she replied, No, I wouldn't. I'd be married to the President of the United States. I probably don't need to explain that the assonance of this anecdote lies in the fact that it confirms our notion of Hillary Clinton as kingmaker and string puller, as backdoor and backroom woman who's so good at what she does that if Bill Clinton had not existed, she would have invented him. This image of Hillary begins, of course, at Wellesley College, where as president of the student government in 1969, she addressed her graduating class. She was the first undergraduate ever to speak at the school's commencement exercises, and her remarks exude the typical over-exuberant 21-year-old's mix of idealism and idiocy. We're not interested in social reconstruction, it's human reconstruction, she proclaimed. Not to mention psychobabble reconstruction. We can talk about reality, and I would like to talk about reality sometime. Authentic reality, inauthentic reality, the potentiality for imaginatively responding to men's needs. But Hillary was at her Creative Writing 101 Rhetoric 11 best when veering into foxy, frisky thoughts about searching for more immediate, ecstatic, and penetrating modes of living. It's no wonder that after this podium delirium, Rodham was photographed for life as part of a roundup on the rising youth culture leadership. Even looking so serious and dowdy in big, non-stylish aviator glasses, bottomed off with sensible shoes and horrible stretchy striped trousers. You know the kind. The ones that don't even flatter people who look good in everything and are inevitably worn by those who look good in nothing. Even in all this frump adornment, the picture suggests the possibility of wildfire. In fact, in a less frequently published photograph from the same era, Hillary makes her best play for this year's model, captured in a clingy ensemble of an itty-bitty miniskirt and knit t-shirt with a necklace of bangle links suggesting some style sense after all. The picture is clearly posed, but the expression is all fun. These days, she seems stuck up. Back then, she looked as if she might have had awesome, sexy potential, or shall I say, potentiality. She looked as if she might have actually inhaled. Could there be any other explanation for that speech? So Hillary Rodham took all her buoyant rocket fuel and headed to New Haven, Connecticut. She went to Yale Law School and she believed passionately in things. She wanted to make right all that was wrong in the world, and she thought she could fly spaceships to the moon, literally. At age 14, Miss Rodham had written a letter to NASA to find out the requirements for entering its burgeoning space program. Of course, she was told there were no girls allowed in NASA's very tall treehouse. Instead, she met Bill Clinton, went to Arkansas, and became the little woman behind a big man. Instead, she ended up no different from, say, Barbara Bush. Hillary is just her husband's wife, and nothing more. her descent into complete devotion to the man with the Memphis thick sideburns, the thwack of black pompadoured hair, and a serious, seductive drawl began with her resolve to graduate from Yale Law a year late so that she could be in the same class as her beloved Bill. How he managed to affect her so deeply is anyone's guess, but love and lust have made people weak since time immemorial, so why not Hillary? And of course, one can only imagine that such an intense and purposeful sort as the young Hillary must have been particularly susceptible to the rare man who saw her sensual possibilities. Given what we know now, Hillary's Wellesley speech reveals a young woman who was about to burst if somebody did not find access to the corruptible, disheveled part of her that had had it with doing homework for the boys she had crushes on, that wished they'd at least feel her up now and again. As Yale Law classmate Michael Medved recalled to David Brock in his book, The Seduction of Hillary Rodham, Hillary was not somebody who was considered date bait because of her weight and her presentation. She was not a glamorous figure by any stretch of the imagination. She was everybody's best friend. Even old boyfriends whose feelings were presumably romantic are rather bloodless when talking about Hillary. The thing that I remember most were the conversations Jeff Shields, Hillary's Harvard boyfriend during her Wellesley years, told Vanity Fair. Not that it isn't lovely to have men remember how great it was to talk to you, but he isn't even saying, "We spoke all through the night, and then we went skinny dipping in Walden Pond," or "We had crazy dreams and we told each other everything." It sounds more like lengthy debates on farm subsidies and the Great Society and should they come clean with Jean or just stick with Bobby. One thinks of Hillary as Minnie Driver in Circle of Friends or Jeanne Garofalo in The Truth About Cats and Dogs, reminding us that even plain and practical girls are entitled to dream. But if most of the boys saw Hillary as comfort and conversation, Bill Clinton uses words such as dumbstruck to describe his earliest response to her. One imagines that their first encounter was like the scene in The Big Sleep, where Bogey wanders into a bookstore at just about closing time, and at the stroke of 5, the librarian-like school marmish sales clerk takes off her glasses, lets down her hair, lowers the shades, gets some paper cups, and pours them a pair of moonshine drinks. And suddenly this sweet, severe young woman is not so sweet, and not at all severe anymore. It's the Bogey magic. Or at Yale Law in 1970, the Bill magic. And for someone like Hillary, wound as tight as coils of copper wire, that feeling must have been like the life force itself, like electricity. To be suddenly noticed as a sexual object is supposed to be the downfall of every smart, self-assured young woman who once had goals and plans of her own. Known as Sister Frigidaire by her Wellesley sisters, Hillary was bound to melt, but not like the Wicked Witch of the West, no, more like the Siamese cat of a girl in the Rolling Stones' Under My Thumb, a song that reflects the misogyny implicit and explicit at a time when women's liberation was just getting underway, suggesting the appeal of surrender, of just giving in, abandoning the fight, which is the closest I can come to an explanation for Hillary's decision to follow her heart by following Bill to Fayetteville, Arkansas. Since the day of reckoning, the only fight this once sassy sister has fought with any conviction is the repeated battle to save her marriage, to defend its inconsistencies to a baffled public, to, in essence, shout out to all the stars in the sky and for all the world to hear that while everyone else thinks that Jennifer Flowers and Paula Jones and Monica Lewinsky have their leggy legs to stand on, they are not, as Loretta Lynn once put it, woman enough to take away her man. While all these women are being deposed and discussed like the slutty nuances that Hillary no doubt thinks they are, she and Bill are in the Virgin Islands, dancing in their bathing suits like the pudgy, middle-aged, free-loving couple that they perhaps are. In the absence of any coherent narrative to explain how in the hell the Clintons stay married, all we have is Hillary on Today and Good Morning America citing right-wing conspiracies, speaking admirably of her husband. I counted 39 times that she referred to my husband on GMA before losing track, and basically saving Bill from himself, which has pretty much been her only job for decades. Somehow, after serving on the precedent-setting prosecution team for the Watergate hearings, which was one of her first jobs out of Yale Law, Hillary set aside her goals for Bill, who would not compromise on his plan. "If you want to run for public office, you could be elected," Bill told her. "But I've got to go home. That's just who I am." And it was not just her career that went by the wayside, it was also the causes that mattered to her, among them a fundamental belief that a woman should be her own person. The wisdom or the stupidity of the choices Hillary made are for her and history to judge. But the one thing that all who are watching are in a position to know is that she truly did choose marriage über alles. That she has come to stand for hard-headed, hard-hat feminism is just ridiculous. Hillary Clinton is something much more basic, an all-American, rugged Midwesterner with childbearing hips, stocky legs, and most likely a strong back, and a utilitarian body inherited from the middle American gene pool that is designed to deliver a baby one day and carry sacks of corn and grain from silo to pickup truck the next. Whatever attaching such words as the 60s and Wellesley and civil rights might do to this equation, it is still a picture descended from Grant Wood's American Gothic. The painting is a bit creepy, but the farmer with his pitchfork and his daughter with her tight, taut bun are synecdoche for this country. Hillary, too, a native of Illinois, is part of agrarian America. Descendant of a long line of indigenous personae, she is the political wife. And yet, so much expectation has been loaded upon Hillary. On the one hand, furthest to the right on the spectrum of insanity, there is the Rush Limbaugh crowd, which calls Hillary a feminazi and claims she wants children to disown their parents and vice versa, with abortion for all, even as her pal Jocelyn Elders advocates self-pleasure talk for kids, and her buddy Lanny Guinier explains that it isn't really about quotas, it's about taking turns so everybody wins. These right-wingers are the people who bumper sticker their cars with slogans like "Impeach the President," and her husband, too. But frankly, the blustery blame from the Limbaugh American Spectator nexus is not nearly as disturbing as the hopes pinned on Hillary by those close to her and those who work in Democratic politics. Her mother had intended her to be the first female Supreme Court justice, but Sandra Day O'Connor put the kibosh on that. There was talk of Hillary's taking the Attorney General position if her husband was elected, though her brother Hugh Rodham thought it was beneath her. Attorney General is only local lawmaking, he has said. There's treaty negotiations she could do. There's labor stuff. There's Secretary of State. What is interesting about all these speculations on Hillary's possibilities is that they are precisely the assumptions one makes for a gifted youngster. These are not the kinds of things you say about an adult, unless, of course, that person has somehow failed to live up to expectations. Because all these grand ideas, serving on the Supreme Court, heading up the State Department, getting an elected office, perhaps becoming the first woman to chair the Senate Armed Services Committee, or maybe withdrawing to the academy and getting tenure at some law school, all these notions are pie-in-the-sky dreams. As far as Hillary is concerned, those dreams are gone, not deferred. They are gone completely. She has surrendered it all to wifedom. Looking after Bill Clinton is her job. When you compromise yourself as much as Hillary has, changing her hair, her name, her style, and invest in another person all your hopes for an idealism that you hold dear, you become thwarted, frustrated, and neurotic, like a parent living through his or her child, or more to the point, like a nagging wife. The insanity of being nothing but a wife was maddening enough to move a Westchester homemaker, fed up with the daily struggle to achieve a mop-and-glow kitchen, to write a book called The Feminine Mystique. But the madness of political wives is special. Its hush-hush nature means that, like the passions of most wild things reduced to captivity, it develops twisted, intractable strains while in hiding and emerges in public as particularly sordid. A crazy wife is damaging to a public servant's rising star, so political wives have become the last bastion of womanhood that keeps a stiff upper lip, not for themselves, but for the sake of their husbands. They probably tell themselves it's for the sake of America, or Tennessee, or Wichita, or for the sake of the big cause that this will someday fulfill. Someday healthcare reform will make this all worth it. Running on this Ponzi scheme of political and personal compromises, an unusual number of crazy ladies have haunted the governor's mansion or the White House throughout our history. Documentaries have been made about Mary Todd Lincoln's mental condition. Images of Kitty Dukakis drinking rubbing alcohol because the Massachusetts governor's mansion was emptied of all other booze are complemented by images of Betty Ford getting fall-down plastered in the White House. If I get elected president, it will be an unprecedented partnership, far more than Franklin Roosevelt and Eleanor, Bill Clinton said during the 1992 campaign. This assurance was meant to be Hillary's payoff for having to concern herself with the name Rodham, and for the blonde hair, hers and many others, and for Jennifer with a G, and Paula with a shiny complexion, and for investing in futures, and giving up glasses and apologizing to Tammy Wynette and pretending to bake chocolate chip cookies. But of course it didn't work out that way. Instead, people have come to dislike Hillary intensely for her duplicity. America's disenchantment with Hillary, which has been seen as a referendum on career women, feminism, baby boomers, or even power couples, is, if anything, about our distrust of those who don't earn their keep. No one minds Elizabeth Dole, extraordinary and accomplished as she is, because what threatens most people is not women who work for a living, which is, after all, what most women must do, but rather women who linger and connive behind the scenes, the shifty shrews who operate without position and therefore are not accountable, cannot be fired, cannot be trusted. While it infuriates me to see Hillary Clinton impugned and despised with attitudes reminiscent of pre-feminist misogyny, she has probably earned the scorn because, well, she hasn't gotten the job. She is a power bulimic stealing pints of Ben & Jerry's Chunky Monkey from someone else's freezer. So what is strange about the story of the gas station attendant who would be king is that it offers a succinct illustration of what makes so many Americans suspicious of Hillary. Her controlling nature, her puppeteer position, her fingernail grip. What is even more strange about this story is that it's meant to depict Hillary as the strong-arming woman, the bold-like feminist, the woman in charge. It is meant to remind us of how scary it is to have a powerful woman living in the White House. Americans' inability to bring ourselves together to elect a woman to our highest office, and the fact that the Democrats made it appear that in 1984 they had to beat all the Bushes, double entendre absolutely intended, to come up with an obscure, hopelessly unelectable Queens, New York congresswoman to share the ticket with an even more unelectable Walter Mondale has become something of an international joke. This squeamishness is the sole reason that we can justify Hillary's decision to realize her political ambitions through her husband. In a country where even Ivy League schools and white shoe law firms and other ancient male bastions all have their share of women wielding power, we have not come even kind of close to having sent a woman to the Oval Office. And we have reached the point where we think it's normal for things to be that way. It's tolerable that the best job we can come up with is a first lady with a fancy law degree and no job. We accept that the vice president's wife is a grown woman called Tipper, and maybe Hillary figured it out and decided she would rather light than flight. So now, the only time Hillary is really likable and sympathetic to us at all is when she's being the Tammy Wynette type that she once so disparaged, standing by her man, playing cleanup lady for the smutty, dirty mess made by other women and her husband. She came up with a health care plan that the liberals distrusted and the conservatives flat out dismissed. And it took dozens of task forces and town meetings and rap sessions and focus groups and fireside chats just to figure out that, surprise, the United States will never be Canada. But wait, a sex crisis. And Hillary goes on every morning television looking fresh and well-groomed, at last styled in a cut and color befitting a professional woman with an advanced degree. In her mocha pantsuit, she looks at once comely and wifely. And somehow we're all charmed. We think she's terrific, the best asset he's got. Without Hillary, Bill is just another silly guy going on about how what Monica did to him isn't really sex. Really, it isn't, and 21 isn't that young. And Hillary? Hillary Clinton is a tragic thing, a woman so completely defined by her status as a spouse that her only outlet for intellect and emotion is her wifely duties. So much so that she's happiest when performing the tasks that to most people would seem most painful, taxing, and degrading. Now let me ask you, isn't this precisely the kind of situation feminism came along to get rid of? That does it for that article. I found it a little ironic and funny that directly after Hillary Clinton's article, this was the very next article that's being shown. Yes, that's Monica Lewinsky with a hot dog, and Bill Clinton giving his speech that he did not have sexual relations with that woman. So, sort of ironic. Hope you enjoyed this week's article. Next week we'll start our CIA series, and I'm really looking forward to those. Those are some very interesting articles, and I'll also try to do a little extra research on the side so you guys can get a little more knowledge from them. It's been kind of a heavy week this week, so I thought this was a great article to read today, just something kind of fun and light to help take some of the heaviness off of our hearts. I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you next time.
Magazine, George, which is a hoot of a magazine. I thought you were a lawyer.
I was.
What happened?
Well, we decided, actually taking a cue from folks like yourself and you around the 1992 election, that there was an opportunity here to change the definition of a political magazine. Certainly the way Americans were accessing information about politics and politicians was changing. Candidates were appearing on late-night talk shows, on talk radio, on sitcoms, and there was a kind of a leveling process, and while the rest of media clearly had caught up with that, we felt that political magazines per se hadn't.
Your mother was a hell of an editor at Doubleday.
That's what I hear.
Would she have liked George?
I think she would have.